Right then, let's unpack this. Have you ever paused to consider what truly underpins human behavior in our professional lives, or even, in our social circles? Beyond the surface pleasantries and the formal agreements, there's often a subtle, intricate dance of influence at play. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into some truly timeless principles that have consistently shaped power dynamics throughout history. We're talking about patterns of human interaction that are surprisingly constant, offering profound insights into how we navigate and indeed steer our world.
Yes, and what's particularly fascinating here is that we're not discussing overt aggression or brute force. Instead, we're peeling back the layers to reveal the almost invisible forces that allow individuals to subtly guide situations, win allegiances, and ultimately achieve their objectives. These aren't necessarily about manipulation in a pejorative sense, are they? It's more a deep understanding of human psychology, the levers that have been observed, documented, and successfully employed across centuries and diverse cultures. It's about recognizing how individuals truly acquire and maintain influence.
Exactly. And our mission today is to distill some of these enduring principles. We want to reveal not just the quiet strategies that lead to significant success, but also those common pitfalls that can undermine even the most promising efforts. Prepare yourself for some genuine aha moments because I suspect these insights will subtly yet profoundly shift your perspective on nearly every interaction you have from this point forward. So, to kick off our exploration, let's begin with what's arguably the most fundamental aspect of influence: how you present yourself to the world. It begins, as the old adage goes, with your reputation.
Indeed, reputation is arguably an individual's most vital asset. It precedes you, shaping perceptions long before you even utter a word. And it can either swing doors wide open or slam them shut in your face. Right. Think of it as a kind of magical quality, almost, that can amplify your strength exponentially or cause people to retreat. The core idea is to construct a clear, utterly simple reputation, perhaps grounded in one sterling quality, maybe unparalleled efficiency, or unwavering trustworthiness, perhaps even an alluring seductiveness. This singular quality then acts as a calling card, broadcasting your presence and placing others under your spell, in a way. It's the ultimate preemptive strike.
That's quite a thought. So, you're suggesting that the mere perception of who you are, what you stand for, can be far more powerful than your actual capabilities in a given moment. That the story others tell about you dictates the reality they experience.
Absolutely. Take the extraordinary account of General Zhuge Liang during China's War of the Three Kingdoms.
Yeah.
He found himself in an utterly desperate situation, trapped in a small town, only 100 men, facing an enemy force of over 150,000 troops, led by the formidable Sima Yi.
Goodness, doesn't sound promising.
Not at all. But instead of a desperate defense or a frantic retreat, Zhuge Liang ordered the town gates thrown wide open. He had his meager handful of men disguise themselves as civilians, calmly sweeping the streets. He himself sat atop the city wall, serenely playing his lute.
Playing his lute while facing an army.
Exactly. Sima Yi, upon seeing this utterly bizarre display, hesitated. You see, Zhuge Liang had this legendary reputation for strategic brilliance and trickery, almost mythical. Sima Yi, terrified of a cunning ruse, a trap of unimaginable sophistication, ordered his vast army to retreat. That reputation alone achieved a staggering victory without a single blow exchanged.
That's truly incredible. It makes you realize how much of our perceived reality is, in fact, a construct of reputation. So, the power of an unassailable reputation can actually intimidate overwhelming adversaries and effortlessly attract allies. It allows you a profound degree of control over how the world judges you, even in dire circumstances. But I mean, in our hyper-transparent, digitally amplified world where every misstep is recorded, every nuance debated, how does one even begin to cultivate an unassailable reputation anymore? Is it less about building and more about damage control now?
That's an astute observation. While the tools of communication have certainly changed, the fundamental human psychological response to reputation remains. Building it today involves consistent messaging, yes, but also a strategic understanding of when to engage and when to withdraw, and protecting it. Well, that raises the very question: how do you actively defend that carefully constructed persona from those who would inevitably seek to undermine it? It's an ongoing active process of cultivation and defense, demanding vigilance and, well, adaptability.
Right. Okay. So once you've started to get a handle on that reputation, the next logical step seems to be ensuring it's actually seen. Because let's be honest, for anyone seeking influence, the worst fate isn't criticism, it's being completely ignored.
Precisely. At the inception of any endeavor, attracting attention is paramount. And what's truly counterintuitive here is that the quality of that attention, surprisingly, can initially be secondary. P.T. Barnum, the legendary American showman, understood this implicitly. He was notorious for attracting attention, even if it was negative attention.
Really? Negative attention.
Oh yes. If a newspaper critic absolutely savaged his show, Barnum wouldn't just ignore it. He'd invite that critic to the next opening, make sure they had the very best seats in the house. He even, on occasion, anonymously penned harsh attacks on his own work, purely to keep his name circulating in the papers.
Blimey, that's bold.
Barnum intuitively grasped that true failure lay in obscurity. Negative attention, while seemingly undesirable, was still a valuable commodity. It drew people in, got them talking.
So it wasn't just about sensationalism for its own sake, was it? There's also a subtle, almost ethereal art to cultivating mystique, keeping people intrigued, even when you're not actively promoting something.
There absolutely is. Consider the enigmatic Mata Hari. She captivated Paris not solely through her dancing, but by weaving this ever-changing, mysterious origin story. To journalists, she'd claimed to be Dutch but raised on Java. Then later she'd lived in India or Sumatra learning sacred dances.
So constantly shifting the narrative.
Constantly. No one ever knew anything certain about her background, but journalists didn't seem to mind the inconsistencies. They eagerly filled the void with their own romantic fantasies, comparing her to goddesses, creatures from Baudelaire. She skillfully fostered an aura that made her name utterly omnipresent. This isn't about mere flashiness, it's about strategically crafting an image, a persona that distinctively sets you apart, makes you inherently memorable, and ensures you remain a constant subject of discussion. Creating, as they say, a place in the sky for your star.
But how do you then ensure the attention you attract, whether through that kind of boldness or through mystique, translates into genuine respect and deference? It feels like it comes down to how you actually carry yourself, doesn't it? That subtle, unspoken language of presence.
Indeed. It's fundamentally about projecting an unwavering aura of confidence and, well, intrinsic entitlement. People, as a rule, are remarkably receptive to those who carry themselves as if they intrinsically belong at the very top. Now, this isn't about crude arrogance, which often betrays underlying insecurity. Not at all. Rather, it's a calm, self-assured bearing that emanates from a deep sense of internal conviction. Think of Haile Selassie, who'd go on to rule Ethiopia. As a young man, he was quite far down the line of succession. Yet from a remarkably early age, he exhibited this self-confidence and a regal bearing that genuinely astonished everyone around him, eventually paving the way for his ascent to absolute power.
It sounds almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? If you consistently act as if you're destined for greatness, as if you're already in command, others eventually start to believe it too, and maybe even defer to it.
Precisely. Master con artists, people like Count Victor Lustig and Jelle Kidwile, they understood this principle with remarkable depth. They would instinctively assume the elaborate trappings of wealth and an almost disdainful nonchalance. Lustig, for instance, would arrive at exclusive hotels in a luxurious limousine, driven by a Japanese chauffeur, an unheard-of extravagance at the time, designed to make him appear exotic and of immense consequence.
Creating an image.
Exactly. Weil, similarly, would subtly allude to magical, effortless money-making methods, standing aloof, exuding this air of quiet confidence as if he were already fabulously wealthy. Their victims, captivated by this air of inherent power and success, would literally beg to be included in the deal, convinced by the sheer aura these men exuded. This vividly demonstrates that your perceived value is, more often than not, a direct reflection of how you value yourself. It's about meticulously setting your own price through your bearing, not just through explicit words or overt claims, and compelling others to buy into that projected worth.
Right. Okay, so now that we've established how to command attention and project authority, let's delve into the more subtle, often strategic ways to influence outcomes. And this, I suspect, frequently involves a calculated touch of deception.
It certainly can do. One of the most potent tools in this arena is the strategic deployment of selective honesty and generosity. A single, well-timed, sincere gesture can disarm even the most wary individuals, effectively lowering their guard and creating a crucial opening for your influence.
Selective honesty. So, not actual honesty all the time.
Well, it's honesty used as a tool. Take Count Victor Lustig once more. He famously approached the notorious Al Capone, promising to double his $50,000 investment. Instead of immediately absconding with the money, Lustig, to Capone's astonishment, simply placed the money into a safe deposit box for 60 days.
Just left it there.
Just left it there. Then he returned it, claiming the deal had unexpectedly fallen through. Capone was so utterly impressed by this apparent display of honesty. Who returns money to Al Capone? He then readily invested in Lustig's fantastical money machine, genuinely believing the Count was a truly honorable man. The act of returning the money completely disarmed him.
That's a masterstroke, isn't it? It's almost like a psychological Trojan horse. The unexpected gift of honesty cleverly disguises a much larger, more devious strategic intent. It throws off all their expectations.
Precisely. Or consider Otto von Bismarck's famous speech in 1850. At the very peak of war fever against Austria, Bismarck, a passionate Prussian nationalist, astonishingly delivered a speech advocating for peace and even praised Austria. This utterly confused the deputies as it flew in the face of everything he stood for.
Why would he do that?
It was, however, a meticulously calculated move. He knew the Prussian military was unready for war, and crucially, the king desired peace. This dishonest display of peaceful intent secured him a coveted cabinet minister position and eventually the premiership. From there, he later, on his own terms, initiated the very wars he had so publicly disavowed. The art lies in employing honesty or generosity as a smokescreen. It's not about being fundamentally dishonest, perhaps, but strategically deploying sincerity to gain trust and access, expertly diverting attention from your actual purpose.
It's a common human instinct, isn't it? When you're seeking a favor or hoping for collaboration, to appeal to past kindness, shared history, or even simple mercy. But that, it seems, is often a fundamental mistake.
Indeed. The most frequent error when soliciting assistance is to appeal to mercy or gratitude or sentimentality. Most people, at their core, are pragmatic creatures. They respond with far greater enthusiasm and commitment when they perceive something tangible to be gained for themselves.
Right, what's in it for them?
Exactly. Think of the Corcyraeans appealing to Athens for assistance against Corinth. They didn't drone on about past favors or emotional ties, not at all. Instead, they shrewdly highlighted how their alliance would directly benefit Athens, denying Corinth a stronger naval position, granting Athens crucial strategic naval access. Athens, a highly pragmatic naval power, responded directly to this appeal to self-interest. They understood that when individuals face an argument about past obligations versus future gains, a pragmatic mind almost always chooses the future.
So it's about shifting the focus entirely from what they owe you to what they tangibly stand to gain themselves. It's a completely different frame.
Exactly. Joseph Duveen, the renowned art dealer, was an absolute master of this principle. He didn't simply try to sell paintings. Oh no. He covertly spied on millionaires like Mellon, meticulously understanding their unique tastes, their deepest insecurities, their personal histories.
He spied on them.
Well, gathered intelligence, let's say. He didn't lecture Arabella Huntington about art. Instead, he appealed to her profound desire for social recognition, making her feel important not merely for her immense wealth, but for her exquisite character and discerning eye. This deeply personal appeal led to her becoming one of his most devoted clients, culminating in her acquiring the Blue Boy. The crucial takeaway here is to thoroughly understand the other person's world, their true motivations, their aspirations, their fears, and then meticulously tailor your request to perfectly align with their self-interest. It's about expertly demonstrating how helping you will ultimately benefit them.
Sometimes, of course, direct action can simply be too risky or perhaps just unseemly. This is where using others to do your bidding comes in, particularly when things inevitably go wrong and you need to keep your hands clean.
This is fundamentally about maintaining an unblemished public image. Direct responsibility for unpleasant actions can severely damage your reputation, so it's often far wiser to employ an intermediary, sometimes called a cat's paw, or even to strategically sacrifice someone as a scapegoat to deflect blame.
A scapegoat sounds harsh.
It can be. During the Han Empire's collapse, General Cao Cao famously miscalculated grain supplies during a prolonged siege. To avert widespread unrest and blame from his army, he shrewdly blamed and executed his chief of commissariat, presenting it as a necessary, if brutal, sacrifice for the army's morale. The soldiers readily accepted this scapegoat. It's always easier to blame an individual for misfortune than to acknowledge a leader's mistake. The bloody sacrifice of the scapegoat, though archaic literally, lives on symbolically even today.
And what about using someone to achieve an objective without them even realizing they're being used at all? That's the classic cat's paw, isn't it?
That's it, precisely. Mao Zedong masterfully used the Japanese invasion as a cat's paw against the nationalists during the Chinese Civil War. He deliberately allowed Chiang Kai-shek's forces to bear the full brunt of fighting the Japanese, knowing full well it would decimate their military strength. This strategy weakened his main rival without expending his own forces, vividly demonstrating how a cat's paw can be used to achieve victory indirectly, keeping your own resources intact. The essence of this tactic, while undeniably harsh, ensures that you are consistently perceived as the source of all good, while any negative consequences or dirty work are deftly deflected elsewhere. It is, however, a delicate balance. Overuse can certainly breed resentment and, well, make your moves alarmingly predictable.
It feels as though the most effective way to truly guide people isn't through overt force or command, but by skillfully giving them the illusion that they are making their own choices. That's a powerful psychological lever.
Indeed, and it is a profoundly accurate observation. The most sophisticated deceptions are those where the victim genuinely feels entirely in control. By meticulously limiting the available choices to only those that all ultimately serve your purpose, you can guide outcomes with remarkable precision without ever appearing coercive.
Like a maze where all paths lead to the same exit.
Exactly. Consider when Ivan the Terrible famously returned to Moscow after a self-imposed abdication, a brilliantly calculated move to test the loyalty of his nobles, the boyars. He then offered his bewildered subjects a stark choice: grant him absolute tyrannical power or face the terrifying prospect of civil war and find a new leader from within their squabbling ranks. Faced with the horrifying alternative of chaos, they chose his despotic rule, effectively giving him an authority they could not later complain about or revoke.
So it's about crafting the dilemma itself, ensuring that every single path available ultimately leads straight to your desired outcome. It's like a rigged game where the players still feel autonomous.
Precisely. Think of Ninon de Lenclos, the 17th century courtesan, who absolutely loathed any form of dependence. She allowed her numerous suitors to choose how they would pursue her, either as a paying patron or as a devoted martyr admirer who would only receive her affection at her discretion. This exquisite illusion of choice, meticulously tailored to their individual pride, kept them utterly enthralled and completely dependent on her terms. The power of this approach lies in tapping into the fundamental human need for autonomy, even if that autonomy is severely constrained. People are far less likely to resist when they genuinely believe they are making the decision themselves, even if you meticulously set every single parameter. It's a formidable tool for subtle manipulation.
We all, deep down, have desires, aspirations, perhaps even some escapist tendencies. We dream. Can those deeply ingrained human longings be leveraged for influence?
Absolutely. Truth and reality, let's be frank, can often be harsh, even profoundly ugly. People are instinctively drawn to those who can conjure vivid romance and compelling fantasy, offering a much-needed oasis from the mundane, the distressing, or the simply uninspiring.
Give them something to believe in.
Exactly. Consider Il Bragadino, the alchemist in 16th century Venice. Faced with a period of severe economic decline, the Venetians desperately craved a miracle, a sudden transformative event. Bragadino, through vague but tantalizing promises and theatrical elaborate displays, cultivated an irresistible aura of being able to transmute base metals into gold. He never actually produced any gold, of course.
Of course not.
But his slow, deliberate pace and the captivating spectacle of his experiments only amplified his popularity and attracted vast sums of money as people eagerly flocked to the seductive fantasy of sudden wealth and miraculous recovery.
So it's about artfully offering the moon and captivating their imagination, rather than presenting the hard, unvarnished truth or a path of gradual, difficult improvement.
Exactly. This perfectly illustrates the power of promising the moon over the slow, arduous grind of hard work. It preys expertly on people's deepest hopes and fears, offering a comforting, often thrilling narrative that is invariably more appealing than a difficult truth. James Graham's Temple of Health in 18th century London is another excellent parallel. He cleverly combined pseudoscientific apparatus like the absurdly named largest air pump with elaborate visual spectacles: electric stars, pleasing scents, melodious music, and the infamous grand celestial bed. Visitors, utterly dazzled by the show and the grand promise of miraculous cures, readily believed in its curative powers, despite the complete absence of any actual scientific basis.
Right. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Relationships are undeniably central to our lives, but in the often cutthroat world of influence and power, they can become incredibly complex, can't they? Who can you truly trust when the stakes are so high?
It sounds profoundly counterintuitive, doesn't it? But friends can often prove far more dangerous than enemies. Friends are inherently more susceptible to envy, and surprisingly, even acts of kindness can, in a strange twist, breed resentment.
Kindness breeds resentment. How so?
Well, when you appoint a friend to a position, for example, your act of favor can subtly afflict them. They might feel chosen not purely for their merit, but for your patronage. This can lead to simmering resentment and corrosive envy over time. Enemies, by contrast, often have considerably more to prove, and once truly won over, they can become astonishingly loyal allies.
That's a fascinating, almost cynical perspective. Can you elaborate on this unexpected dynamic with a more concrete example?
Certainly, consider Michael III, the Byzantine emperor. He foolishly entrusted his closest childhood friend, Basilius, a man with no political experience, head of the royal stables, as his chief counselor. Basilius, perhaps feeling the sting of Michael's patronage and the burden of unearned favor, eventually conspired against Michael and had him brutally murdered.
So the friend turned killer.
Indeed. Conversely, when Talleyrand, Napoleon's cunning foreign minister, decided to subtly turn against Napoleon, he needed a truly reliable partner for such a perilous undertaking. He chose Joseph Fouché, the ruthless head of the secret police, a man who was, in fact, his most hated enemy and had even previously tried to have him assassinated.
He chose his worst enemy. Why?
Talleyrand knew that Fouché, expecting nothing but an opportunity to prove his worth and rebuild his own standing, would work tirelessly and reliably to achieve their shared clandestine goal. This vividly illustrates that loyalty born of the compelling need to prove oneself can be far stronger and more reliable than loyalty built on shared history or simple affection, especially when personal fondness clashes with the cold realities of professional power.
It's tempting, isn't it, to always want to help those in distress, to extend a hand to someone struggling. But it seems there's a real, often overlooked danger in associating too closely with misfortune.
Indeed, it's a crucial insight. Emotional states are remarkably infectious, almost like diseases. Trying to rescue a drowning man can, more often than not, precipitate your own disaster. Misfortune possesses a strange magnetic quality, drawing itself to individuals and then, like a virus, spreading outwards.
Like emotional contagion.
Precisely. Consider Lola Montez, a notorious 19th century courtesan. She kept her lovers utterly enthralled, yet invariably drew them into her deep, utterly unresolvable problems. Her inherent instability and chaos would inevitably infect their lives, leading to financial ruin, social ostracization, and in tragic cases, even violence, as seen with George Trafford Heald, a young army officer whose life was utterly destroyed by his intense association with her.
So it's not about being heartless or lacking empathy, but rather about a very strategic form of self-preservation. Recognizing when someone else's crisis is simply too contagious to manage without risking your own stability.
Exactly. Think of Cassius, the Roman conspirator consumed by envy and discontent against Julius Caesar. Caesar's clear preference for Brutus only deepened Cassius's simmering resentment. Cassius relentlessly whispered into Brutus's ear, infecting him with his own rancor against Caesar, relentlessly pushing Brutus into the conspiracy that ultimately led to Caesar's assassination. Brutus, who might otherwise have waited for a more opportune moment, or perhaps even avoided such a drastic path, was entirely swayed by Cassius's constant, insidious negative influence. This principle isn't about being heartless. It's a stark warning about strategically distancing yourself from chronically negative, emotionally unstable, or problematic individuals to safeguard your own emotional and professional stability. Otherwise, you risk becoming utterly consumed and unhinged by their issues rather than merely helping them.
It genuinely sounds like true independence and indeed true power comes from making yourself utterly indispensable to others, so much so that they simply cannot function without you.
Exactly. The more profoundly you are relied upon, the more intrinsic freedom and power you inherently possess. The maxim here is deceptively simple. Never impart enough knowledge or skill for others to operate without you.
Keep them needing you.
In essence, yes. Otto von Bismarck, upon his entry into the Prussian parliament, strategically aligned himself not with fleeting political parties or individual ministers, but directly with the king himself. He meticulously wove himself so deeply into the king's affairs, rendering his services so utterly critical to the functioning of the state, that dismissing him would have plunged the monarchy into immense difficulty. He made the king utterly dependent on his unique services.
That's an incredibly clever way to transform what might seem like a subservient position into a formidable one of real power. It's about leveraging dependency.
It creates a mutually beneficial, albeit fundamentally unequal, relationship. Another vivid historical example is Louis VII and his astrologer. Louis, deeply superstitious, greatly valued the astrologer's predictions until one came true, making him fear the astrologer's uncanny power. Louis decided the astrologer had become too dangerous and planned to kill him. However, sensing the trap, the astrologer shrewdly predicted his own death if Louis harbored ill intent, specifically describing a scenario that would unmistakably implicate Louis. Louis, both dependent on the astrologer's unique skills and terrified of appearing responsible for his demise, spared him. By embedding yourself deeply into a master's operations or by possessing a unique, irreplaceable skill, you gain immense leverage and security, effectively making the master, in essence, a slave to your indispensability.
So once you're strategically positioned and perhaps indispensable, how do you manage to innovate or maintain your unique perspective without alienating or threatening those around you? Because surely being too radical can invite backlash.
That's a crucial insight. The fundamental truth here is that overtly flaunting unconventional ideas or behaviors can be instinctively perceived as a form of disdain, an unspoken arrogance that invites swift punishment. People will often assume you merely seek attention or that you look down upon their conventional ways. It's far safer to subtly blend in, to cultivate the common touch, and to nurture your true originality only amongst a trusted few who genuinely appreciate it.
Blend in to stand out later.
In a way, the philosopher Tommaso Campanella, facing execution for heresy in the 17th century, feigned madness to ingeniously disguise his true beliefs. His inquisitors, convinced his radical views stemmed from an uncontrollable unsoundness of mind, commuted his death sentence to life imprisonment. He survived by outwardly appearing utterly unsound while preserving his true philosophical thoughts for himself.
That's a powerful form of strategic camouflage, isn't it? A way to operate beneath the radar while still holding true to your convictions internally.
It is. Consider Bertolt Brecht, the committed communist playwright, appearing before the House Un-American Activities Committee in America. Unlike others who aggressively challenged the committee members, Brecht played the opposite game entirely. He wore a conservative suit, smoked a cigar, a known favorite of a key committee member, and answered questions with ambiguous generalities and disarming politeness. He effortlessly charmed the committee, who let him go without consequence, a stark contrast to others who aggressively challenged them and faced severe repercussions. This is about masterfully understanding the delicate balance between authenticity and conformity. Outwardly, you present a familiar, non-threatening exterior, while meticulously reserving your true thoughts and plans for those rare individuals who will genuinely appreciate them without feeling challenged or, crucially, inferior.
It almost seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? But sometimes being too flawless, too perfect, can actually work against you. It's a strange vulnerability.
Perfection, especially when it appears innate and effortless, possesses a dangerous quality. It breeds silent enemies through insidious envy. It's a perilous path. Instead, occasionally displaying harmless, relatable defects or openly admitting to minor vices can paradoxically make you appear more human, more approachable, and deftly deflect that destructive envy.
Show a chink in the armor.
Precisely. Think of the playwright Joe Orton. As his brilliant talent blossomed and increasingly overshadowed his partner, Kenneth Halliwell, Halliwell's envy spiraled to a pathological degree, ultimately leading to a violent and tragic end for Orton. This vividly illustrates the profound danger of one person appearing too perfect, while the other feels increasingly inferior and becomes utterly consumed by resentment.
So a carefully chosen, deliberate imperfection can actually be a surprising strength in the pursuit of influence. It makes you less of a target.
Precisely. Cosimo de' Medici, an immensely powerful figure in Florence, consciously avoided any ostentatious display of greatness. He never flaunted his immense wealth or power, preferring to appear as one of the people, even strategically forging alliances with those below him to secure their unwavering support. This deliberate understatement allowed him to deftly deflect the corrosive envy that could have otherwise toppled him, as it did the rival Albizzi family. This is a subtle yet incredibly powerful act of self-preservation. By subtly allowing others to feel superior in some small, inconsequential way, you effectively lower their guard and prevent the insidious attacks that deep-seated envy can incite. As the saying wisely suggests, only gods and the dead can seem perfect with impunity. It's about being strategically relatable, not genuinely flawed.
Right. Moving into the more advanced strategic plays, we begin to observe how true masters of influence can manipulate the very flow of events, bending time and circumstance to their will.
The human mind inherently values what is scarce, what is rare. An overabundance of presence, too much constant circulation can make you appear common, ordinary, and inevitably devalue your presence. Strategic withdrawal, on the other hand, can paradoxically inflate your perceived worth and ignite fervent discussion about you.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder, or at least more respectful.
Something like that. Napoleon himself astutely noted, "If I am often seen at the theater, people will cease to notice me." In today's hyper-connected world, inundated with constant digital presence, the game of strategic withdrawal is arguably even more powerful. Consider novelists like J.D. Salinger and Thomas Pynchon, who deliberately disappeared from the public eye and cultivated almost cult-like followings precisely because of their elusive nature.
But is there a significant risk of miscalculating this? Does absence always genuinely make the heart grow fonder, or can it backfire spectacularly?
Not always, and that's the fine line. There's a crucial distinction between strategic absence and simple disappearance. Take Sir Guillaume, a troubadour who attempted to orchestrate a reconciliation scenario by feigning anger and dramatically leaving Lady Guillaume. His absence, however, led her to pursue him, an almost unheard of act for a lady of her standing, which ironically caused him to respect her less. The intended effect backfired entirely because he miscalculated the type of absence needed. He sought reconciliation, but inadvertently created an unwanted reversal of roles and a loss of perceived value. This is a sophisticated game of hide and seek. Knowing precisely when to withdraw, when to create that tantalizing void, can profoundly heighten your mystique and make your eventual return far more impactful. But it must be meticulously calibrated.
Predictability grants others a powerful sense of control over you. So it stands to reason that deliberately disrupting that predictability, keeping people guessing, could be an incredibly potent tactic.
Humans inherently crave familiarity and consistent behavior in others. By being deliberately inconsistent, by behaving in ways that appear to have no discernible purpose or pattern, you effectively keep people profoundly off balance. They exhaust themselves trying to decipher your motives, desperately seeking a pattern that isn't there, which grants you a decided psychological advantage.
Keep him guessing.
Exactly. In the legendary 1972 World Chess Championship, Bobby Fischer's famously erratic behavior demanding changes to playing conditions, even forfeiting a game, making surprising blunders, completely rattled Boris Spassky, who was a creature of habit, accustomed to predictable opponents. Fischer's seeming lack of a clear strategy was, in fact, a brilliant strategy in itself, to keep his opponent unsettled and off balance. Spassky simply couldn't decipher his moves, which ultimately led to his undoing.
So the confusion you deliberately sow in others creates a strategic vacuum that you can then exploit for your own advantage. It's about maintaining an upper hand not through strength, but through psychological disorientation.
Precisely. The Duke Cosimo of Florence deliberately fostered an atmosphere of confusion around him, ruling supreme amidst the very uncertainty he cultivated. This calculated unpredictability ensured that no one could presume to know his will or confidently anticipate his next move, rendering him virtually unchallengeable. This tactic, when masterfully executed, can be profoundly intimidating. It forces others into a perpetual reactive mode, constantly scrambling to decode your actions while you retain the initiative and dictate the narrative. It's about keeping your enemies perpetually guessing.
Speed is often lauded as a definitive sign of power, isn't it? But it seems that patience, a quiet waiting, is equally, if not more, crucial in the grand scheme of influence.
The true master of influence understands that time possesses different modes. There's long-term time, forced time, and end time. Never appearing in a hurry instantly betrays a profound sense of control, allowing opportunities to ripen naturally and, often, trapping your opponents in the quagmire of their own impatience.
Let them rush into mistakes.
Precisely. Consider Tokugawa Ieyasu, the Japanese emperor, who patiently waited for his predecessor, Hideyoshi, to embark on a disastrous invasion of Korea. Ieyasu deliberately refrained from involving himself, knowing that the invasion would inevitably lead to Hideyoshi's downfall, perfectly positioning himself to seize power when the time was utterly ripe, which he did with immense artistry and strategic brilliance. He waited years, then struck.
But surely there are moments when you need to accelerate things, to apply pressure and force a decision. What about that?
Absolutely, that's where forced time comes into play. Cesar Borgia was legendary for his ability to force time during negotiations, abruptly pressing for an immediate decision, unnerving his opponents and compelling them to yield prematurely. Even the great magician Houdini understood this. He would theatrically struggle for an hour to escape from seemingly impossible restraints, making his feats appear even more miraculous and dramatically enhancing his reputation, even though he could have freed himself much sooner.
Theatrics of time.
Exactly. This deliberate slowing of time heightened the impact. Franklin Delano Roosevelt used similar theatrical timing during his 1932 election campaign, retreating into strategic silence before his inauguration to heighten national anxiety and anticipation, making his subsequent decisive actions all the more impactful. This is about becoming a detective of the right moment, knowing precisely when to stand back and when to strike fiercely, leveraging others' impatience or their glaring lack of foresight.
It sounds like maintaining a remarkably cool head is paramount, but can you also strategically use other people's emotional reactions to your distinct advantage? To weaponize their anger or frustration?
Absolutely. Well, you yourself must remain utterly calm and objective. If you can deliberately provoke anger or intense emotion in your adversaries, you gain an immense decided advantage. Their heightened emotional state invariably clouds their judgment, making them profoundly prone to errors, rash decisions, and revealing their
We
weakness.
rile them up.
Yes, Talleyrand and Fouché, when subtly conspiring against Napoleon, quite possibly goaded him into a furious public tantrum. Napoleon's incandescent outburst, famously calling Talleyrand shit in the silk stocking, brutally laid bare his profound loss of control for all to witness, irrevocably damaging his public image. Talleyrand, utterly unflustered, merely commented on Napoleon's bad manners, starkly highlighting the emperor's complete lack of composure.
So it's about expertly setting a trap, not for their actions, but for their emotions, knowing they'll walk right into it.
Precisely. This tactic mercilessly exploits the chink in their vanity, causing opponents to spectacularly overreact and inadvertently expose their deepest weaknesses. It's about setting a bait they are almost certain to take, putting them fundamentally off balance. Anger, you see, only narrows options, and the powerful simply cannot thrive without a full spectrum of options. Once you train yourself not to take matters personally and to exercise absolute control over your own emotional responses, you gain the extraordinary ability to manipulate the emotional responses of others, inciting them to make rash moves that serve your purpose. This next principle, well, it's perhaps one of the most ruthless, yet it is astonishingly frequently observed throughout history. History indeed is replete with cautionary examples of what happens when you show mercy to a defeated foe. The principle unequivocally states that a defeated enemy, if given any chance, will always eventually seek revenge. Power, therefore, demands the complete suppression of opposition, not out of malice, but out of stark strategic necessity. No half measures. None. Empress Wu of China, after consolidating her absolute power, systematically eliminated anyone who could possibly pose a threat to her reign, including, chillingly, her own son and niece. This ensured her 40-year rule was one of the longest and most stable in Chinese history. Ruthless, yes, but effective in maintaining power.
So a partial victory is, in fact, a dangerous one. Leaving even a single ember of opposition alight is a profound risk.
Extremely so. The epic rivalry of Xiang Yu and Liu Pang in ancient China demonstrates this with chilling clarity. Xiang Yu repeatedly showed mercy to Liu Pang, allowing him to escape when cornered. Liu Pang, however, used each of these reprieves to regroup, rebuild his forces, and return stronger, eventually leading to Xiang Yu's total defeat and ultimately his suicide. Xiang Yu's own advisor had prophetically warned him, to let him go would be like rearing a tiger, it will devour you later, a prophecy that proved tragically true. Cesare Borgia, similarly, after luring his treacherous mercenary captains to Senigalia under the guise of reconciliation, had them quietly arrested and executed, while simultaneously crushing their forces. This masterpiece of trickery ensured the total annihilation of his enemies, leaving quite literally no ember alight.
Right. It's becoming clear that the world of power isn't solely about strategy or brute force, but also about a kind of captivating performance, one that often taps into deeper human needs for awe and wonder.
Absolutely. Striking imagery, grand symbolic gestures, and theatrical displays create an irresistible aura of power that bypasses logic entirely and goes straight to the emotions. People are inherently drawn to what is grand, what is larger than life, what fills them with awe. Think of Cleopatra's famously dramatic arrival on the Cydnus River in a golden barge with resplendent purple sails, adorned as the goddess Aphrodite herself. It utterly mesmerized Antony and drew entire crowds away from the bustling marketplace. It was a meticulously crafted visual feast designed to create profound awe and brilliantly deflect attention from her shrewd political intentions. This kind of spectacle imposes itself as an undeniable given, creating powerful associations and bypassing rational doubt.
And it's not simply about grand one-off entrances, is it? It's also about sustained, almost subliminal symbolism that reinforces a desired image over time.
Precisely. Diane de Poitiers, Henri VI's influential mistress, strategically identified herself with the chaste Roman goddess Diana, subtly intertwining her initials with Henri's on monuments and royal regalia throughout the kingdom. This pervasive symbolic display elevated her image, granting her an aura of respectability and solidifying her unique, almost sacrosanct position at court, despite the nature of her actual relationship with the king. This is, in essence, pure theater. Dazzle people with compelling appearances, and they won't even begin to notice what you're truly orchestrating behind the scenes. It's a shortcut straight to the heart, bypassing rational doubt.
Beyond just compelling spectacles, there seems to be a deeper human longing at play, a fundamental need for something to believe in, something to follow, particularly in times of uncertainty.
Indeed. In the absence of established organized religion or grand unifying political causes, people possess an overwhelming, almost primal desire to believe in something. By offering a new faith, a new cause, by keeping your words vague but brimming with intoxicating promise, and by emphasizing raw enthusiasm over cold rationality, you can become the magnetic focal point of that profound desire.
Tap into that need.
Exactly. Take James Graham's notorious 18th century Temple of Health in London. It cleverly combines pseudoscientific apparatus like the largest air pump with elaborate visual spectacles. Electric stars, pleasing scents, melodious music, and the infamous grand celestial bed. Visitors, utterly dazzled by the display and the promise of miraculous cures, readily believed in its curative powers, despite the complete lack of any scientific basis whatsoever.
So it's about artfully crafting a compelling, perhaps even fantastical narrative, even if it's based on very little actual substance, and then drawing people into it through their own need to believe.
Absolutely. Even a seemingly simple, outlandish lie, such as Reb Fievel's story of a five-legged, three-eyed, green-bearded sea monster in the synagogue, can spiral into widespread, earnest belief, even drawing in the cautious rabbi himself. This vividly illustrates the astonishing human propensity to believe once others begin to do so, creating a collective fantasy. This power lies in tapping directly into people's deepest hopes and vulnerabilities, offering a narrative of transformation and escape. It requires vague promises, compelling imagery, and a subtle appeal to shared belief, even if that belief is entirely manufactured. People are often far more receptive to a pleasing fantasy than a harsh truth.
It's fascinating how adaptability itself can become a truly powerful strategy, particularly when times are turbulent and unpredictable. That ability to be shapeless, to flow like water.
Rigidity, in any form, is a profound weakness in the world of power. In a constantly changing, fluid world, the innate ability to adapt to assume a formless style renders you elusive, frustrating your opponents at every turn and allowing you to expertly conceal your true intentions.
Be unpredictable.
Very. Mao Zedong's communist forces, initially far weaker than Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists, brilliantly adopted a jigsaw pattern of dispersal, employing guerrilla tactics that made their movements utterly unfathomable and completely frustrated the enemy's conventional, rigid strategies. While Jiang's forces were broken into smaller, isolated units, Mao's forces were like water, seemingly without fixed form, adapting seamlessly to the terrain and situation, always flowing around obstacles.
So it truly is about being like water, not rock, as they say. Being able to change shape, dissolve, and reform as needed.
Exactly. Ancient Persian King Xerxes, despite commanding a vast, overwhelming army, was warned that his fixed form, a huge, slow, conventional army, was profoundly vulnerable to the formlessness of the land and sea. His supply lines would be impossibly stretched, his fleet lacked safe harbors, his rigid formations could be outmaneuvered. His unyielding adherence to a conventional approach ultimately led to his spectacular downfall. This demonstrates that formlessness is a powerful, deliberate strategic pose. It gives you room for tactical surprises, it foils spying, it ensures you are always dictating the terms while others are caught trying to decode you, it keeps the initiative firmly on your side.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? If there's something you simply can't have, or if a minor problem crops up that feels petty, the best revenge, or perhaps the most elegant solution, might simply be to ignore it entirely, to show complete disdain.
Acknowledging a petty problem, or indeed an unattainable desire, invariably gives it existence, weight, and credibility. The more attention you grant an enemy, the more you unwittingly empower him. Conversely, the less interest or emotion you reveal, the more superior and detached you appear.
Starve it of oxygen.
Precisely. When Pancho Villa, the Mexican rebel, sensed his popularity waning, he deliberately provoked the United States, drawing out a fruitless punitive expedition from General Pershing. By skillfully eluding the superior force, Villa brilliantly regained his folk hero status, as even Americans came to admire his resourcefulness. His strategic indifference to the U.S. military's efforts elevated him, while the U.S. Army was left humiliated.
So sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all, or a meticulously feigned indifference. It's a form of psychological jujitsu.
Precisely. Consider Henry VIII's strategic disdain for his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. He achieved this by formally banishing her from court and referring to her only as Princess Dowager, effectively nullifying her status, paving the way for his marriage to Anne Boleyn, despite fervent papal disapproval. He simply acted as if the marriage was already dissolved, and his resolute refusal to dignify Catherine's position ultimately worked. Conversely, think about Henry Kissinger, famously furious about the Pentagon Papers leak. He impulsively urged the formation of the plumbers unit, which ultimately led directly to Watergate. His intense, obsessive focus on fixing a minor problem that might have simply blown over only amplified its significance, demonstrating how trying too hard to fix a minor issue can create a far larger, catastrophic one. This principle demands immense discipline and self-control. It's about resolutely refusing to dignify petty issues with your precious attention and meticulously maintaining an air of detached superiority. It can be remarkably effective.
Right. Okay. This deep dive has undeniably revealed a plethora of fascinating strategies for gaining and maintaining influence. But it feels equally, if not more, important to truly understand the hidden traps and common mistakes we absolutely must avoid.
Indeed. Succeeding a truly great predecessor or having the burden of a famous influential parent presents a unique and insidious challenge. You must relentlessly avoid being lost in their colossal shadow, as anything you accomplish will be relentlessly compared and, more often than not, deemed inferior.
The long shadow effect.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Consider Louis V, who succeeded the illustrious Louis XIV, the Sun King. He inherited a powerful kingdom, yet he utterly struggled to escape his grandfather's immense legacy. He became idle, self-indulgent, and indifferent, leading France into disarray and eventually setting the stage for revolution, earning him the ignominious moniker Louis the Last. He seemed to genuinely believe the king's sole purpose was idleness and pleasure, a belief that consumed him.
So, to truly forge your own path, you have to actively and perhaps even ruthlessly break from that legacy, even if it's revered and seems unchallengeable.
Absolutely. Alexander the Great, by contrast, consciously adopted an almost ruthless strategy against his father, King Philip of Macedonia. He intensely disliked Philip's cautious style, his bombastic speeches, his drinking, his pursuit of pleasure. Alexander forced himself to be bold and reckless, meticulously controlled his tongue, refused to waste time on pleasures that brought no glory. He quite literally forged his own identity as a decisive man of few words, ensuring his legacy stood apart and, crucially, surpassed his father's. The path to true independent power in this context demands profound psychological independence. It's about mercilessly breaking from the past, even if it means subtly disparaging a celebrated legacy, to establish your own unique identity and vision.
It feels instinctively that retreating into a fortress for security, whether physical or emotional, could actually be a grave mistake in the world of influence.
You've hit on something crucial there. Human power is fundamentally dependent on social interaction and constant connection. Isolating yourself, whether physically behind palace walls or emotionally behind a mask of aloofness, inexorably cuts you off from vital information, diverse perspectives, and real-time feedback, making you paranoid and incredibly vulnerable.
The echo chamber effect.
Precisely. Consider a Chinese emperor consumed by fear of plots, who increasingly isolated himself deep within his labyrinthine palace. His ministers and eunuchs began to enact policies without his knowledge and meticulously plotted against him, eventually leading to his demise. His extreme isolation meant he lost his ear for what was truly happening outside, rendering him an easy target.
And it's not just about political power, is it? Does this danger of isolation extend to creative and intellectual pursuits as well? The idea that great minds need interaction.
Quite so. Take the artist Pontormo, who, suffering from an acute phobia of human contact, spent 11 years in self-imposed isolation within a chapel, painting frescoes. He died before finishing, and his work, as described by his contemporary Vasari, was a chaotic mess, utterly devoid of proportion, a direct consequence of his profound isolation from external feedback and perspective. While temporary isolation can indeed foster intensely clear thinking, Machiavelli wrote The Prince in Exile. Remember, constant prolonged retreat invariably leads to a loss of contact with the very sources of your power and influence, rendering you an easy target. Power thrives on circulation.
Change, of course, is often necessary, even vital for progress. But how do you introduce significant change without causing widespread revolt or profound backlash? That seems to be a tightrope walk.
People, at their core, are creatures of profound habit. While they might intellectually grasp the need for a change in the abstract, too much innovation, too many radical shifts at once is deeply traumatic and can almost certainly lead to powerful backlash. Thomas Cromwell, during the English Reformation, pursued incredibly radical Protestant reforms under Henry VIII. While initially successful, his rapid wholesale changes stirred powerful revolts in the North and ultimately led to Henry undoing many of them, and indeed to Cromwell's own dramatic fall from grace. Too much, too fast.
So the key is to make even radical change feel incremental, or perhaps even familiar, by cleverly associating it with existing traditions or values.
Precisely. Mao Zedong, after the failed Cultural Revolution, brilliantly framed his power struggle against Lin Piao by casting Lin as representing Confucian conservatism the past and positioning himself with legalism the new revolutionary order. By associating his radical changes with an ancient, established philosophical tradition, he skillfully softened the impact and garnered vital support. This suggests that necessary change should be presented as a gentle improvement on the past, meticulously respecting old ways, and, if absolutely necessary, framing revolutionary new ideas within comfortably familiar contexts to soothe anxieties and preempt reaction.
It's always tempting, isn't it, to take things that are offered for free? Who doesn't love a free lunch? But there seems to be a strong, almost cautionary warning against it here.
What is offered for free, my friend, often comes with a deeply hidden obligation, a subtle trick or an unseen cost. Paying your own way meticulously keeps you clear of burdensome gratitude, unwanted guilt, and potential deceit, thereby maintaining your absolute independence.
Nothing is truly free.
Rarely. Joseph Weil, the infamous Yellow Kid con artist, thoroughly understood human greed for a free lunch. He'd cunningly offer free real estate, but then charge an exorbitant registration fee or promise fixed races and guaranteed profits. The irresistible lure of something for nothing consistently blinded his victims to the obvious scam. They were willingly paying to be deceived.
So the true cost isn't always monetary, but often lies in a loss of autonomy or a hidden debt that compromises your position.
Exactly. When Henry Ford was offered expensive art books as a supposed gift by art dealers hoping to sell him paintings, he shrewdly declined, stating he couldn't possibly accept such an expensive present from strangers. He instinctively understood the hidden obligation, the subtle pressure. This isn't just about money, it's profoundly about power dynamics. Accepting something for free places you in a position of inherent debt. True power lies in the ability to give freely, buying influence rather than being indebted. Now, while it's often strategically astute to take credit for others' work, as we touched on earlier, there are specific critical circumstances where sharing credit, or even deliberately giving it away, is the far wiser path. Henry Kissinger, during Nixon's historic visit to China, performed incredibly deft behind-the-scenes diplomacy. Yet he expertly allowed Nixon to publicly take the lion's share of the credit.
Knowing he'd done the real work.
Knowing the truth would eventually emerge, he didn't jeopardize his short-term standing by hogging the limelight.
That's a truly counterintuitive move for someone as fiercely influential as Kissinger was. It shows a very long-term strategic vision.
It does. Kissinger played the game with consummate skill, took credit from below, ceded credit above. This allowed him to ultimately survive Watergate and continue serving under a new president, while more overtly loyal men were unceremoniously fired. This reversal is particularly crucial when dealing with those above you. Sacrificing immediate glory for long-term standing can be incredibly effective, demonstrating loyalty without diminishing personal influence. And while boldness is often celebrated, timidity, which is often an acquired habit, is undeniably dangerous. However, audacity too has its absolute limits. Boldness can cleverly mask mistakes, yes, but it must always be precisely calculated. Unbridled audacity, divorced from reality or without foresight, can just as easily lead to spectacular disaster.
The fine line.
A very fine line. Count Victor Lustig, attempting his audacious sale of the Eiffel Tower, was incredibly bold, flashing badges, giving tours. This audacity initially disarmed his targets. However, Monsieur P, one of the financiers, hesitated at the final moment, questioning the lack of government offices involved, almost saw through it. Lustig's audacity was nearly his undoing when trust was stretched just a fraction too far.
So even the most audacious plans eventually reach a breaking point where they become simply too unbelievable, where the reality punctures the illusion.
Exactly. Balboa, obsessed with finding gold, was characterized by sheer, relentless audacity. He constantly took immense risks, ignored warnings, got into scrapes he then had to audacious to get out of. He failed to consider the long-term consequences, the enemies he made. This eventually led to his beheading for treason. His recklessness finally caught up with him. It's crucial to recognize when confidence morphs into dangerous recklessness. Your fears might be disproportionate, yes, but it doesn't mean consequences don't exist. Finally, we previously discussed the immense value of spying, of gaining information. However, an established, undeniable reputation for deception can fundamentally nullify its effectiveness. If you are already widely known for your cunning, your attempts at subtle information gathering will almost certainly be seen through immediately.
They'll expect it.
Exactly. Continuing to play naive when everyone already knows your game just makes you appear hypocritical, severely limiting your ability to maneuver. Your targets will simply stop believing anything, rendering your efforts futile.
So what's the strategic play then? If your reputation for deception is already widely known and you can no longer operate under the radar, do you simply change tactics entirely?
In such cases, paradoxically, it can be more effective to simply own up to your reputation. Present yourself as an honest rogue, or perhaps a repentant rogue. This can surprisingly earn you admiration for your frankness, allowing you to continue your stratagems more openly. People might appreciate the transparency, even if it's calculated. It's about adapting your approach when your tactics become too obvious, finding a new angle to maintain influence, even if that means embracing the very reputation you once sought to conceal.
What an extraordinary deep dive into the fascinating, intricate world of human power dynamics. From the profound importance of building an unshakable reputation to the subtle art of disarming an opponent through selective honesty, these insights undeniably remind us that genuine success so often hinges on understanding and truly mastering the enduring principles of human nature.
Yes, and if we connect this to the broader canvas of human history, it becomes crystal clear that these aren't merely historical anecdotes or clever tricks, but timeless frameworks that have been at play for millennia. They fundamentally encourage us to look beyond the surface, to rigorously question our assumptions, and to consider the underlying, often hidden motivations in every interaction we have. The courts of old imagined themselves the pinnacle of refinement, didn't they? But beneath their glittering surface, a cauldron of dark emotions, greed, envy, hatred perpetually boiled. Our contemporary world, similarly, imagines itself the pinnacle of fairness. Yet those very same ugly emotions still stir powerfully within us, just as they always have. The fundamental game remains, as ever, the same.
So, what does this all mean for you, our listener? Perhaps it's about recognizing those invisible forces already at play in your own professional life, or simply understanding why certain individuals seem to navigate the world with such an uncanny ease, almost effortlessly bending situations to their will. The true power, we believe, lies precisely in this heightened awareness, the ability to truly understand the game, and perhaps to know when to place your iron hand inside that velvet glove.
This prompts an important question for reflection, doesn't it? How will understanding these timeless patterns empower you to be more effective, more insightful, and ultimately more in control in your own endeavors, rather than being simply a pawn in someone else's carefully orchestrated game?
We genuinely hope this deep dive has given you plenty to reflect upon and perhaps even some new tools for your own interactions. If you've enjoyed this exploration, please do consider rating and sharing this deep dive with a colleague or friend. It truly helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Thank you for joining us.